are listening to GORCAST, you idiot.
Bardia, what's going on, brother?
What's up, Taylor? It's been a minute, man.
You're back, dude.
Yeah.
Welcome. Dude, we had to run it back in the new studio. I'm basically trying to go through as many as I can. A lot of my first couple guests were in Portland, where I'm from, and but I had one of them come back. I've had three other people do episode 2 of the pod. So I'm sorry you're not the first, but I'm trying to get everybody, like, you came through and did the pod when it was like, you know, shitty quality, and like now we got this space, and so I'm like, dude, we got to run it back with some of the first couple people that did it with me.
Yeah,
so,
man, this is a dope spot. Congrats on it.
Thank you, man.
You're
we're putting all the work in.
Joe Rogan giving him a run for his money with the whole setup.
Dollar Tree. We're Dollar Tree Rogan here, dude. That's what we are. Wish.com Rogan. How you been, man?
I've been good, man.
Yeah?
I've been good. It's been, probably like 8 months or so since,
it's been about a year.
We last chatted. Yeah, probably close to a year. Been good, man. Been staying really busy, really focused on everything. Just with Stop Drinking Coach, I've got my own podcast, you know, got into a relationship. And so, yeah, man, just staying busy, just moving forward.
Can you do me a favor? And just because we have, you know, new viewers coming in all the time, and the old podcasts, you know, people might not go back and check it out. Can you kind of like reintroduce yourself to people and just kind of let people know what you do, and then like kind of the quick version of your story, how you got here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure, man. So my name is Bardia Rezaei. I'm 32 years old, and I'm the Stop Drinking Coach. I started Stop Drinking Coach almost about a year and a half ago. After a little while after I got sober. So I just hit 3 years sober, alcohol free.
Congrats,
last
dude.
month. Yeah, thanks, man.
Fuck yeah.
And yeah, man. So, you know, I have this coaching program called Stop Drinking Coach. It's a proactive coaching system to help people quit drinking alcohol, and it takes a neuroscientific and trauma informed approach. And so I help people quit drinking and really step into a new chapter in their life. And the way that I got here was, if we just take it back, quick version, I grew up in a really crazy dysfunctional family. Dad was an alcoholic. There was all types of just kind of childhood trauma and dysfunction. And Dad ended up passing away from alcoholism when I was 14 at the young age of 57. I got into drinking around sophomore year, and the very first time I picked up alcohol, I became a binge drinker. I was never the type who could just have one. As soon as I would have one drink, a switch would go off, and I'd keep drinking until you know we'd get sick or drunk or whatever else. And so from the very beginning, I knew that alcohol was problematic. You know, I saw what addiction had done to my family. It took my dad, and you know, right around that time, at a really early age, I got into personal development. I started reading all the books, and I'd read kind of all the personal development books by the time I was 20.
Like self-help type
stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. First book I read was given to me by my uncle when my dad passed away. He came down to help at the funeral, and it was called "You'll See It When You Believe It" by this guy named Wayne Dyer, the spiritual guru who passed away. And so I just kind of got obsessed with this field of self-development and growth and consciousness and philosophy and spirituality. And so half of my personality was like really oriented around personal growth and fulfilling my potential and becoming a better version of myself. The other half of me just loved to party, and it felt like I was reliving the same week of my life over and over and over again. I was high functioning, but once the weekend came around, I would binge and I'd have a 2 to 3 day hangover and then right back at it.
That's
and
crazy.
So I tried quitting a bunch of different times. I did the AA deal. You know, I had a therapist for a little while, and nothing really seemed to work. Fast forward, what happens, you know, pandemic hits, you know, 2020, and, you know, the world is kind of in disarray. Everything's shut down. Everybody's stuck at home, and I start drinking every day. I would go from kind of drinking 2-3 days a week to every day. Volume started to rapidly increase. I got up to drinking like 4 to 6 bottles of wine a day. Did that for like 6 months, and everything was just breaking down before I kind of hit this rock bottom moment where dislocated my left shoulder in a pool while I was swimming, and it was the most excruciating pain of my life. And that was kind of the come to moment where I just went into some deep self-reflection. I was 29 at the time, a few months away from turning 30. And in that moment, life kind of flashed before my eyes, and I realized that I was a universe and a half away from the person that I thought I would be at 30 years old.
Right.
And so in that moment, I realized, like, I'm about to go into my 30s. I'm finished out my 20s here. I've seen this relationship that I have with alcohol, And if I want to step into my potential and become the person I know I'm capable of being, there's no way I could do it while drinking.
Right.
And so in that moment, made what seemed like the hardest decision of my life, and that was to quit drinking. I took it one day at a time. Soon after, I started working with a coach and a coaching program. I ended up moving out to Austin. I became a coach within their system, led retreats, coached a bunch of people, worked with them for about 18 months, and decided I just had this intuitive feeling of wanting a sense of autonomy. And so left them. A few months later, jumped on TikTok and just kind of very organically
Started
upon
spitting that game.
Spitting bars, yeah.
Yeah, you do spit bars, dude.
Yeah.
I love that. And so from there, it's just kind of taken off for you.
Yeah, you know, my buddy was like, dude, you got to get on TikTok. I started posting just like some mindset, personal development type stuff. Was getting a couple hundred views, nothing crazy. And then I randomly saw this video about sobriety in TikTok. I'd never seen anything about sobriety. And I went into the comment section, and there was just comment after comment, hundreds of people like, I'm on day 2, I'm on day 5. Oh, I just relapsed. It's so hard. And so like, I saw pain. You know, my background is in marketing, digital marketing, advertising. And so I just saw pain, and I was like, maybe there's something here. If there's a lot of people in pain, maybe there's a way to help them. And so I started producing content around sobriety, and that content just started taking off. Like the first video I posted was this silly video of me at the pool. It was like 5 ways my life got better after I quit drinking.
I saw that.
Text. 6-second video.
It was like lost weight, got a girlfriend or something, right?
Yeah,
like,
it was like moved to a new city, made a bunch of new friends, like
made more money.
Yeah. Really silly video. I was like, we'll see what happens here. Got 5,000 views the first hour. By the end of the day, it was at like 50,000.
Holy
And I was
shit.
like, I'd never gotten that many views before. And so as I was like thinking about my next step, I was like, well, let me just follow the views. Let me just follow what's getting traction.
Right.
Continue to post more content around my journey in sobriety and what I learned about the whole thing after struggling with it myself for 14 years. And it just kind of kept growing. I started, you know, I threw a link in my bio once I got 1,000 followers. I just started getting on calls with people, helping them, providing them support, advice. And then I, you know, having developed that background in coaching, I was like, you know, maybe there's an opportunity here. A lot of people need help. A lot of people don't want to go to AA. A lot of people aren't interested in like the traditional solutions out there. So, you know, I saw an opportunity to come in and help people learn how to get sober the way that I learned after what seemed like all of the traditional stuff out there just didn't seem to click or work.
Well, and I said this to you on the last thing, and I think I said it to you the day that I met you. We met in a barbecue line when I first moved here.
Yeah.
And just kind of hit it off. And, you know, it's like you don't always meet like people that preach sobriety that are like cool. And I know that sounds like, you know, pretty I don't know, rude or like very black and white statement. I'm sure there's, you know, a lot of people out there that are cool that are sober. I'm not trying to say it, but a lot of the like the people online that will preach sobriety and stuff, they might not necessarily come off like cool, right? And I feel like
it's
to
like
me,
a stigma to it.
Yeah, there's a stigma. I feel like to like when the party's over, right? That's like a big thing for people that want to stop drinking but can't. Like they're like, you know, oh, but like all the cool people are at bars, or like, you know what I mean? And it's like, to me, that was like just something I noticed right away. That was like, oh, this guy like it kind of makes being sober seem cool. Like, and I feel like that must be a big thing for some people, right? Because they think like, I know addicts that are, you know, not even alcoholics maybe, but like just party people that like we all partied together in high school, and then everybody got a job and moved on, but they're still like party, you know what I mean? And it's like they're always still getting fucked up and snorting pills and doing who knows what, you know. We lose touch with those people because you kind of have to, you know what I mean? After you try to help, and then you're like, okay, you know what I mean? I got to take care of myself. But it's like those people seem so attached to that, like, you know, being in that party life because it's cool, you know what I mean? And so you took kind of, when I watch your content, for some reason it takes that little like dash of like lame out of sobriety, I feel like. So that's kind of cool. But
yeah, man, I think this is something I've thought about a lot, like over the last few months, is like part of the reason people struggle to quit drinking is because like they have like they're not really clear on their values, right? And like unconsciously, unknowingly, they have fun at the top of their value hierarchy, which is like what we have as kids and teenagers and when you're in high school and college. And like drugs and alcohol like stunt your mental and emotional growth and maturity, right? You're not developing because every time you experience any sort of dysfunction, dysregulation, internal pain, psychological stress, overwhelm, you're running into life problems, right? You want to make forward progress, but you've got limiting beliefs. You want to go out and change your career, but you don't feel like you're worthy or deserving. You stay stunted psychologically and emotionally. And so everything is about fun. Everything is a means to an end. You're not that excited about what you do. You're not super stoked on like what you do for work. Like your relationships are kind of whatever. You want to go out and you want to make progress, but you feel stuck. You don't feel empowered to do so. And so everything becomes a means to an end for you to just drink. That becomes your source of fun. And it's like, dude, how long are we going to keep the party going? It doesn't mean that like...
Aren't you tired?
Yeah, like you've been to all the parties, you know?
It's never going to get any better. It's a dragon chasing situation, right?
it doesn't change. Like you've seen all the people, and it doesn't mean that when you stop drinking, you stop having fun. It's just that you kind of like grow up and you just begin to reorganize your value system where it's like fun isn't the number one thing anymore. Maybe it becomes progress. Maybe it becomes personal growth. Maybe it becomes achieving goals. Maybe it becomes impact. Maybe it becomes service. Maybe it becomes creativity.
Or even just at the bottom of that totem pole, just feeling good generally. Like maybe just waking up and not feeling like shit.
Yeah, maybe you just want to stop hating yourself all the time.
And you know me, I'm not a sober guy. Like I say as a joke, it's like I'm sobriety adjacent because I have a lot of friends that are sober and I really like what they're doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But like I'm a very mindful like social drinker. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that that reeks of, you know, alcoholism and like making excuses or whatever. And I'm sure I could probably drink less, but at the same time, like alcoholism's always been a thing in my family, so it's like something where like I have a lot of examples of who I don't want to be, right? And so I'm constantly kind of like, you know, like I don't think I'm gonna drink for the next couple days because it's like, you know, we've been so and so was in town, we went out, you know what I mean? Like I'm a conscious, you know, drinker. What I'm sure you have a name for that or like a category to put that in, and that doesn't work for most people or a lot of people, but you know, it's always something that I'm kind of thinking about, you know what I mean? And I'm interested in it, especially when people who have issues like overcome them, you know what I mean? So it's definitely something that's important to me. And more importantly, I think I have friends that have it even less under control, which is why I continue to bring you back on. And I mean, I want to do this with you once a year, you know what I mean? And just because I like hanging out with you and you have a lot of information, you're always kind of learning stuff and, you know, adding to your program. And I just think it's important for, you know, I have family members that listen to this that could probably learn a thing or two, and close friends back home, you know, that could probably, you know, listen to somebody who's cool and who has some good insight about sobriety. So that's why we're having you back on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, appreciate it.
And just for my own enjoyment, because, you know, I'm always kind of like, I'm hyper aware, you know what I mean? So I'm always thinking about like myself and where I was going with that is so I did take like a month off, and you were talking about how it's not, the fun doesn't have to stop, right? And a lot of people can't do this, and I know you don't recommend it to a lot of your what do you call the people that work with you? Your students or clients? Yeah. A lot of your clients, you probably wouldn't recommend this, but like I took a month off of drinking, and I was still like, if somebody hit me up, let's go to the bar, I was like, yeah, let's go. And I was drinking soda water with lime for a month straight, and you know, everyone thought I was drunk. I felt drunk sometimes. I was just we were hanging out at the bar, and I was having a fucking great old time. Yeah. And they'd find out like the next day or later that night, late in the night, that I haven't been drinking at all. Like, oh, yeah, who's gonna drive us home? And I'm like, I'll drive. Like and it was like somebody else said this to me, or you said it to me on one of your TikToks or something, was like, not drinking when everyone else is drinking is a fucking power move.
Totally power move.
And it starts to feel good. You're like, no, I'm good. I'll just give me an extra lime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
totally.
I'm drinking Rambler and lime all night, you know, and like I might have had more fun just doing that. So, I mean, you know, that's obviously not going to work for people with serious problems. But if it's something where you're casually sober and you're trying to like limit your drinking but still hang out with your friends, like that worked for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was like, I could, you know, and then it gets to that point where you're like, I don't need to have a drink to enjoy I'm having a great time dancing on the patio with all these drunk people. It's fun. You know, some people don't have that experience though. You know, it's not the same. It doesn't work that way for everybody.
Yeah,
it's too
for
triggering.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. I think everybody needs to just do some like deep self inventory and reflection and just be like brutally honest with themselves, right? Like you can lie to other people all day long, but it's like you're the one who has to live with the way that you think, the way that you feel, your decisions, and the consequences and impact of those decisions, you know? And so I think everybody falls on a spectrum as it relates to their relationship with alcohol. You know, you've got alcoholism on the extreme end, then you've got alcohol use disorder, which is kind of the whole spectrum of it.
Yeah,
and,
talk about that again once you finish this thought. But.
Yeah, and so you just have to determine like, where am I at? You know, there are mindful drinkers out there. There are people who can have one or two and stop and know the feeling and not overdo it, and then not think about alcohol or crave alcohol or have their life be oriented around alcohol. And it's like, you're an adult. You want to drink alcohol, knowing the consequences it has. If that's a good enough trade-off for you and you can manage it and moderate it, do your thing, you know? But the fact is that, like, dude, if you go to Google and you look up, like, alcohol use disorder, I'm convinced, and I haven't, like, dove super deep into it, but if you watch that new podcast or that new Netflix show, Painkiller, and that guy Peter Berg, who was just interviewed on Joe Rogan, who the whole thing was like a docudrama around how OxyContin came into existence and produced by Purdue Pharma. Incredible docudrama. Should definitely watch it. But like, I'm convinced that the alcohol industry is the same. If you go out and you look at the studies and they're like, only 10 or 12% of people have alcohol use disorder, like, that's such horseshit. Mm-hmm. That's such horseshit. We all know, just counting on our own hands, the friends in our network who have some level of a problematic relationship with alcohol. And I'm just convinced that it's way more people than we see. I think a lot more people are struggling and suffering in silence because of the stigmas. Alcohol is a hard drug, and the way that it interacts with your neurochemistry is aggressive. You know, it increases your dopamine 4x above baseline. So if we're sitting at about 50 nanograms per deciliter of dopamine, which is where we're at, alcohol increases it to around 190 to 200. That is an totally abnormal increase. Now, to give you some context, sex and your favorite food will increase dopamine from 50 to about 100. So alcohol is increasing it to 200. Now, the brain is always trying to maintain a level balance of homeostasis. So if you get this huge spike in dopamine, before it comes back down to its baseline, it's going to dip to the equal and opposite direction and put you in a state of pain. That's why you feel hungover, unmotivated, lethargic, you know, kind of sad, anxious. It's also affecting GABA, which is another neurotransmitter. That's why you kind of feel anxious the next day. So it's like, with repeated exposure to alcohol for years at a time, through high school, college, into your 20s and 30s, you're affecting a very sensitive baseline in your brain. And everybody has the potential to develop dependency and become addicted. It's not a matter of, oh, well, you know, I grew up in a good family, or, you know, we were well off, or, you know, there's no addiction, there's no alcoholism. Like, there's a good percentage of my clients who, I would say most of my clients are between 40 and 60, and a good percentage of them didn't develop a problematic relationship until, like, let's say the pandemic, or, you know, after a divorce.
Big life events.
Yeah, big life event, right? It's like, when you continually expose yourself to alcohol as a way to manage stress, as a way to manage boredom, as a way to kill time, as a way to have fun, there is a debt that you are incurring psychologically, emotionally, and neurochemically that you will have to pay back. There's no free lunch in nature.
Right.
And
I love that quote.
Yeah, it's just so true, right? Like and one thing that developing a problematic relationship with alcohol does, alcoholism, alcohol use disorder, any addiction in general, is it lowers your window of tolerance to pain. Why is it so hard to overcome an addiction? Because ultimately, through that addictive cycle, people develop a very low tolerance to handle pain, whether it's psychological pain, emotional pain, stress, overwhelm, frustration, boredom, any amount of just psychological or emotional pain. It's like, I need to drink. Like,
right.
You know?
We all know those people.
Yeah.
And some of us have been those people.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I was there for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. And so
I think I was when I was younger. Like if some, didn't go my way, it was, I need a fucking drink. Dude,
Yeah.
It sucked,
Yeah.
I don't really think that way anymore, luckily. But
yeah. You get better at it. The longer you stay away from the thing and you learn how to mentally and emotionally regulate, you start to learn how to manage your mind and your emotions, your ability to manage pain and tolerate pain. And it's not like, you quit drinking and your life is full of pain. The front end's going to be pain because you got to pay back debt, all that psychological, emotional, and neurochemical debt from abusing a drug. But eventually, when your mind, body, spirit, energy system starts to develop a sense of harmony and homeostasis again, it starts to rebalance out, life gets so much better. And your ability to handle pain in every capacity shoots through the roof, and you just become a more capable and resilient human being.
And there's totally those people out there. Like I have some of them in my family that like they are building up basically this rap sheet of like fucked up shit that they've done to their family or and I try to have some sympathy because it's like you probably don't even remember any of this stuff, right? You weren't in your right mind when it happened, when the family blowouts, fights happened on Christmas and Christmas was ruined, or all these number of things that have gone on over the last over a decade with this person in my life. You know what I mean? It's like, and so I imagine that when the high goes away and you're just there, it's just you and yourself in a room just dealing with stuff, you start going, shit, I've been fucking up a lot for a long time.
Oh, it's brutal.
And then that's when you go for the alcohol again.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a shame and a guilt spiral, right? So like I just talked about this on my last podcast episode. It's called Alcohol is Mental, Emotional, and Physical Debt. It's like, so if you're at a 7 out of 10 in terms of like stress, overwhelm, frustration, whatever the thing is, you then go to drink alcohol to try to take you down to a 2 so you can relax for a few hours after work or on the weekend. It'll take you down to a 2, but tomorrow when you wake up, it's going to take you to a 10 because one, whatever those problems were never actually were resolved. You didn't psychologically or emotionally regulate. You just suppressed it. You numbed it out. And now you have to deal with the neurochemical cost, the deficit of lower dopamine and lower GABA. And now you're going to be anxious, unmotivated. You're going to be in more pain. And so the entire spectrum of reality, biological nature and evolution, oscillates between the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. Every decision that we make at the deepest subconscious level is filtered through, is this going to provide me pleasure or take me closer to pleasure, or is this going to move me away from pain? And so the reason alcohol is so fucked, the reason drugs are so fucked, is because they take you, like they just throw off this pain-pleasure balance. And they give you a little bit of pleasure for a little bit of time, but it does it at the cost of inducing an incredible amount of pain.
It's a loan with a shitty interest rate.
Yeah, it's a payday loan, right?
Yeah,
so you
from one of those little cash stores.
That's exactly what my last podcast was about.
Okay.
It's like you need $250. They'll give you $250, but they're going to make you pay $350 back. Well, guess what? If you're only making $1,000 a month and you're strapped for cash and you need food and gas, they'll give you that money, But guess what? Your next paycheck's only going to be $900 instead of $1,000 now. So you're going to run out of food and gas and your electricity bill faster.
You're not doing the work to earn that money.
No,
really.
And then you build a tolerance. So next week you go back and you need $250, but now they're going to charge you $355. And then eventually it's going to be $400 because you're going to build a tolerance. You're never going to get as high as you did the first time. You're going to need more of it, and the pain is going to be greater. And so it's this, you can't win it. You're an organic piece of matter going against an infinite reserve of alcohol, right? It's like every time you drink, you further disrupt that balance of your neurochemistry, creating greater levels of pain for longer. And when you experience greater levels of pain for longer, you're going to be that much more motivated to want to go drink and to escape that pain again. So it's a terrible trade-off. You know, if you look at alcohol and you have a 0 to 100%, it's going to give you 5% pleasure for 15 minutes, half an hour while you're fucking around with your buddies, but it's going to induce 95% pain, right? You're going to wake up hungover, guilty, shame,
thinking
less
about
energy,
the work, thinking
less
about
proactive.
all the shit.
You're not regulating, and then it's like, fuck, and then right back to it.
Right.
It's like modern day slavery is what it is.
So you mentioned the debt a few times, and that's basically what we're talking about here. What are some ways that people, I just thought of this in the moment here, what are some ways that people pay those debts back, and to kind of give both sides of it, like what are healthy ways that you could pay that debt back, and what are the toxic ways maybe that most people who are suffering dealing with alcoholism, maybe what are some ways besides drinking that they might pay those debts back, that are negative?
Yeah, that's a good question. So negative is going to be, they're going to try to pay that debt back through porn. They might try to pay that debt back through sugar and through, dog shit food and processed food that just lights up your receptors and has no, nutritional value. You'll try to pay that debt back through doom scrolling on social media, numbing out, just watching tons of shows on Netflix. You'll try to pay that debt back through procrastination in a way, sex, dating apps, like
sex addiction,
anything that will keep you distracted from being present to your psychological and emotional system,
the baggage,
your own thoughts and the sensations running through your body. Anything that could numb you from that and distract you from that are ways that you could negatively try to pay
that's
that
almost
debt back.
like borrowing from a friend to pay that payday loan back, right? To go back to that analogy or whatever, that's like borrowing more money to pay back that first loan from the alcohol.
Well, it's like borrowing more money, or it's like, getting the bill and throwing it away.
Right.
Getting the bill in the mail and throwing it away. So healthy ways to pay it back are really just digging in and following a holistic lifestyle. So cold exposure, cold showers, ice baths are incredible for helping you naturally increase dopamine. Cold exposure is the only thing that scientists have found that will increase dopamine significantly above baseline in a way that's natural. And it doesn't do it in a crazy way where it's like huge high velocity, huge spike followed by a rapid crash. It's like gradual. So cold exposure is really good. Exercise is good. Meditation is good.
So it's not just a TikTok podcast fad, the whole cold plunging thing.
No.
I've done it. I believe in them, but some people are like, oh, Rogan said it, so it must be just a, rich people thing.
No, they're incredible. It's magic.
It is hard for it is worth noting that it's hard for like, a poor dude that's, drinking natty ice to, deal with his problems to find an ice bath.
Yeah, cold showers are the next best thing.
Cold showers, okay.
Yeah, cool. For sure. But really just following a holistic lifestyle, man. Like doing the things that optimize you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, the things that increase your self-awareness. And then it's about like, overcoming an addiction largely at a fundamental level is about getting to a place in your psychological, emotional, and spiritual evolution as a human being where you are willing to finally confront your pain, and you're willing to have the courage to reinterpret and redefine your relationship to pain. This could be physical pain, this could be emotional pain, this could be psychological pain. Ultimately, for everybody, it kind of comes down to the core basic things. It's like, dude, everybody has tremendous amounts of childhood trauma, right? It doesn't matter how good your family is. I have clients who are millionaires who grew up in the picture perfect family.
Sometimes it's even worse than those.
And when you dig in, it's much worse.
Right.
You know? And so
dad was always at work, you know, parents were fighting.
Yeah. It's like, and the thing is, it's like, even if you had the perfect house and the white picket fence and they took you to sports and all that, the fact is that a child's brain and nervous system is so sensitive during those early developmental years. Right. And besides parents, like, you can't control what happens at school and on the playground, right? You get made fun of, you get pushed down, like, you know, you raise your hand in class in 7th grade, teacher calls on you, you're not paying attention, everybody laughs at you because you get the answer wrong. Like, there are so many hundreds or thousands of instances where we experience these painful moments that are more intense than that we have the mental, emotional, and physical resources to make sense of and process. And so they create these imprints and they form the neural synaptic pathways in our brain, and they become parts of our identity and our self-image. And they kind of form these limitations. They affect our nervous system. They put our brain and our nervous system on high alert, right? We develop anxiety. We develop social anxiety. We develop these fears. And, you know, when you're trying to go through life, if you don't feel empowered, if you don't feel confident, if you don't have high self-esteem, if you have social anxiety, you can't, like, you know, your nervous system's out of whack, dude, alcohol becomes a solution. It's the easy go-to.
It's your best buddy.
It's your best buddy. It's the best thing you've ever found. It makes you feel confident, relieves you of all your stress and pain. You stop thinking about your problems. You feel more confident around people. Lowers your inhibitions, like,
especially for people that find that so young, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think I got lucky and didn't really, you know, sneak my parents' alcohol or anything until I didn't start hanging out with those kind of friends until I was like 16, 17, 18, which is still young. But it's like, some people I know in my life, my friends have found it, you know, they found alcohol and tried it for the first time when they were 10, 12. You know what I mean? Like, because it was laying around and they had party parents. And I can still see some of my best friends, you know, deal with, you know, alcoholism stuff. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I feel like they're nowhere near having that conversation. You know what I mean? Like, and they'll even make jokes. And I think we talked about this last time, but like that kind of joking acceptance, that's like a big thing. I feel like in today's world, we're like, oh, we're all alcoholics, guys, let's go out again, we're going out again, I'm an alcoholic, dude, because I'm an alcoholic, I drink. Like, people throw that around
like it's a badge of honor,
like it's a joke, or like the party badge. That's Dave, the party guy, you know what I mean, or whatever. And it's like, it's always the people who definitely it's like a cry for help, I think, in some cases.
Yeah, it for sure is. I mean, if you just lift the hood, like, you just see the truth 100% of the time.
Right.
You know, it's like, you could just sit there and justify it, but it's like, dude, the downstream consequences of drinking, everybody feels it. Nobody is getting out unscathed.
It's scientifically impossible.
Yeah, all the party guys feel it. Everybody wakes up the next day, lesser version of themselves.
Especially them, because their whole identity is wrapped up in going to the bar.
Yeah,
and they're the guy that when you talk about in your program and on the podcast and to your clients, when you talk about cutting people out of your life, right? Who are those people that get cut out? You know what I mean? And like, what's their side story, right? What's the spinoff of your sobriety journey, right? The spinoff is that person, that has to be in some way its own form of trauma or its own source of depression, because for a lot of people, or for a good amount of people, I feel like they do realize the party's over and they're like, okay, fuck, man, like, you know, I can't keep throwing up in the mornings like this. I'm slacking at work. My girlfriend's pissed off at me because I pissed the bed again, or whatever. They're like, I need to move on. Sorry, Dave, I can't hang out with you anymore. And so Dave is just getting repeatedly cut out of people's lives, right? And
that's quite possible.
And so it's like I know, because I have friends still that, you know, I keep tabs on them, but, you know, we don't hang out with them anymore. We don't talk to them anymore. They were the source of the fun from 16 to 23.
Right.
They were, you know, and it's like everybody cut Dave out of their lives. You know what I mean? It's not, Dave isn't the guy's name, but I'm just saying, you know, it's like,
right.
So it's, how do those people wake up and start, you know what I mean? Because that's like a whole nother side story line.
Totally.
Is like Dave's story, who's like constantly not dealing with all of his shit that he needs to deal with to get sober, to get to that point where he chooses a holistic lifestyle. And on top of that, he's kind of seeing people graduate. Right, it's like a guy getting held back in high school, and he's seeing all of his friends kind of graduate and go on to, you know, be sober and have a good life. And who knows what he's saying, like, oh, it's, you know, whatever, nerd, you know, or whatever. It's I'm gonna keep partying, but it's like deep down, he's like, oh, these people are cutting me out of their lives because I'm, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that you're the toxic person in all your friends' fucking lives.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, man. Nobody's ever asked that before. I mean, I think what that is like, dude, everybody's on their own journey, right? We've all got our own syllabus and curriculum that we come to Earth to experience. And, you know, the fucked up part about alcohol and addiction in general is that it's going to take you on a ride. And the way anybody quits, the way anybody stops doing drugs, is when you get to the point where you are willing to acknowledge and accept that the pain has started to outweigh the pleasure. But some people are really fucking hard-headed and have a crazy, weird pain tolerance. Like they will destroy themselves. They will destroy their families. They will run themselves into the ground and smash their head against concrete walls over and over and over again and be blind to the pain.
Yeah.
Just in denial.
I have family like that.
In denial is what it is. Just unwilling to see it. And like, and we look at that and we're like, how could you live that way? Like, how could you operate that way? But really it's, their system is so warped. They're so neurochemically warped. Their nervous system is so out of whack. Their brain is so imbalanced that they literally lose the capacity to see reality for what it is. The pain and pleasure is so out of whack that
they're on like an acid trip of pain and pleasure.
Yeah, and it's like you can't force anybody to get sober. You can't force anybody to wake up. It has to come 110% internally because it is such a personal journey. You have to be the one to do all the work from start to finish. You're the one living in your own body, with your own mind, with your own emotions, going through your day, figuring out how to manage your time, what you're going to do in the evenings, how you're going to spend your weekends, how you reorganize who you spend time with. Nobody can do the work for you. It's a 100% personal journey. I can be there to lay out the path forward, and I can set up all the guideposts and show you, hey, when you get to this, use this tool and apply this strategy and think about it this way. But the person has to be the one to walk it. And until they get to that place where they're willing to recognize that the pain outweighs the pleasure, unfortunately, they'll keep going.
Yeah, and that's another question I had was why do they have to hit rock bottom before you brought up like the holistic lifestyle, right? Mm-hmm. Which is like you can get super nerdy and fun and like excited about anything, like especially with the internet, with people like you, but like with anything, with like podcasting or with like I went down the rabbit hole and I got totally nerdy and I bought all this stuff and I'm like super into it, right? And I'm into like I follow fitness guys and like I have aspirations to be more fit, you know, I'm working on it, but it's like that's, you can nerd out about anything and like make it cool to you, right? Why does it take these peoples that we're talking about specifically with this constant, you know, years-long drinking problem, lifelong drinking problem, why does it take them hitting rock bottom and having like a nuclear episode for them to start looking at that holistic lifestyle stuff and go, oh, that looks cool and fun to me, right? Like you talk to a straight up drunk, right? You catch him when he's not drunk, like right after a hangover, before he starts drinking again, and you try to say, hey man, you should start doing yoga and ice baths and start eating keto and fix your diet and go on a jog. And all that stuff sounds so lame to those people, right?
Yeah.
They go, that's fucking whack. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to party. You know what I mean? That sounds like some nerd stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, why do they need to have a nuclear explosion in their life happen for them to fucking pick up their bootstraps and start, and for that stuff to just start looking fun?
Yeah.
Because you would think that
the thing is, I don't think it ever looks fun. Like you have to do those things because you don't have any other options left.
Okay.
Everything that you've done and tried doesn't work. So like in the beginning, the thought and idea of meditating and going to do yoga and stuff like that is like, fuck, I guess. Like I've never meditated. I've tried to meditate and I suck at it. I can't stop thinking.
Sorry, we're working out the kinks here.
Yeah.
Some flies in the building.
Yeah. Like I don't think it doesn't start to get fun until you do it for a while, and then you're like, holy shit, I feel 100,000 times better. And this is way better than just going around and sitting at a bar talking bullshit with people I'll never talk to again. So in the beginning, I don't think it seems that fun and exciting. You do it because you don't have any other options and you need a way out. You need to figure out how to stop because life is getting extremely unmanageable. And so why do people need to hit that rock bottom? It all has to do with pain and pleasure, right? Like human beings exist in a never-ending oscillation between pain and pleasure. So everything that we do is either pursuing pain or pursuing pleasure or trying to avoid pain. Right. And when you introduce drugs into the mix, it creates such high levels of pleasure that are so abnormal, and such low levels of pain, which you normally wouldn't experience, that it becomes a feedback cycle. When you go super high and nothing else in life provides that high, right? That's all you want. Like going to the gym doesn't seem that cool. Doing an ice bath seems fucking stupid. Yeah. Sitting there and meditating seems dumb, like a waste of time. The only thing that provides a sense of pleasure is that huge increase that you get from the drug, right? And so you end up experiencing all these imprints for decades, right, of exposure to this drug. All of a sudden when you stop the drug, it's like everything's fucking boring. Nothing seems that fun. Nothing seems that exciting. Yeah. And it's like, well, yeah. Like you've destroyed the sensitive balance of your neurotransmitters.
You've been turned up to 11.
You've been turned up to 15.
You blew your hearing out, and now the lower volume doesn't sound good anymore.
Yeah, you can't hear it anymore because you've been at a 15, right? Yeah. And so there's a reacclimation period. There's a readaptation period. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm at a 2 or a 3 now. Like, how do I get myself up to a 7, 8, or 9 so I can have a reasonable quality of life? Well, you got to start doing things that optimize your mind, body, spirit, and neurochemistry. And that has to become your life now. And over time, like, you'll start to really enjoy it.
Yeah, and the hard way to do it is all those things that you've mentioned. The easy way to get there, to get to an 8, is the fucking liquor or the drugs, right?
Right.
The hard way is doing all those holistic things that seem lame to somebody. So I wonder if there's a
hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life.
I mean, it's probably like for some of those people, it must be like asking them to go outside and pick up a stack of bricks. You know what I mean? Like to try to get their life together, or to try and go to the gym.
Man.
Yeah,
it's not easy when you've been assaulting yourself with drugs and alcohol for a long time. Your self-image is distraught. You don't trust yourself. You're carrying bags of just bricks of guilt and shame. You fucked up relationships. It's like, it's not easy.
Your only friends are the ones at the bar. You don't know if you have any real friends or what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, your self-confidence is shot, right? It's like you're struggling to pay bills maybe, or like, dude, it's all over the spectrum.
You notice it so much too when you like I stopped drinking for, a month, and it was like, you notice way more when people are hitting you up to like go drink, right? It's like it's not something you notice while you're a part of it. Like how frequently you're being hit up to go to the bar versus how frequently you're being hit up to go on a walk or go to the gym or go do something fun that isn't alcohol related. It's just like it's woven into the fabric of our society, you know, our social interactions.
Yeah, a big thing too that like you don't really realize until you get sober is that like when you're in that scene, it just seems like that's what everybody does. And it's like, yeah. But there are quite literally millions or tens of millions of people who just don't drink, who maybe have a super take it or leave it relationship with alcohol. And there's so many pockets of life that you can get involved with, so many new connections that you can build with people who are just operating on a different wavelength and frequency, whose lives aren't oriented around what are we doing this weekend. But when you're in it, it seems like, oh, this is everybody I know. And it's like, yeah, but there's so much out there. There's so many people out there whose lives aren't oriented around it. And so it's like, it's a mental, emotional, energetic growth process. As you prune away the relationships who are no longer in alignment with you, you create space, you create a vacuum to be able to create new relationships that are more in alignment with better quality conversations, better different ways we can spend our time. You know, how are we spending our time? What are we talking about? It's all out there, but it doesn't seem like it when you're in it. You know, it takes a little bit of while to it
really grabs a hold of people, man. Like a fucking like Alien or something, like the movies when a parasite grabs somebody and controls them. It's like, like my family member that I keep bringing up. It's like he recently had like like the nuclear. What you would think it's like after a ton of bombs have been dropping in this person's life for you know the last 20 years or more. Like had a extremely close call with death, you know what I mean? And it's hard when those people are in your lives your life too, because like you almost feel worse that you don't feel worse, if that makes any sense. Like, oh, he's at it again, you know, or this isn't news, you know what I mean? It's like, is this going to be the one?
Right.
And it's like, I just don't know if there's, you know, a path for somebody that's so far gone to the alcohol. And when you really start adding it up and you look at where it got this person in my life, it's like he was in a hospital bed, tubes in every orifice, and just on life support, you know, trying to drain fluids out of him. And it's like, the saddest part was that almost none of us were that sad. It was kind of like, when is he gonna get it together this time or fucking not? Yeah. It becomes like all business with your family, your friends. Nobody really gives a shit that you're in the hospital, bro. You know what I mean? Like, can you get your fucking shit together for all of us? You know what I mean? And it's hard because, like, we're talking about Dave again, and the people, you know, being that guy that everyone cuts out of their life. It's like, it really is up to the person, and it's really up to themselves to get themselves out of it, especially when you've pushed it past this point where you've lost everyone's compassion.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
You know what I mean?
It's tough, yeah.
And so it's like, how do you begin to pick up your dirty room? It's like a messy room where you don't know how to start cleaning it up. This is not a messy room. This is a house from the show Hoarders. This is a hoard. And it's like, how do you get to a point mentally where, you know, it's like, and then it's like this person, it's like, will they ever? I don't know. I don't see the writing on the wall. They've got, you know, beautiful children who have children who are all, you know, very much not on that same route. You know, it's like they're all really successful. You know, one's a doctor, you know, had a kid. The other one's, you know, gonna probably go play pro football, you know, and is every step of the way he's been there kind of just trying to hold everybody back, ruining everything. You know what I mean? And then it's like, oh, dad's in the hospital now. You know what I mean? And it's kind of just like, it's really rough. And, you know, I have family that listens to this podcast, and you know, at this point, I really don't care if they see it and hear it, because they, you know, they feel it too. And you know, are dealing. I have family in that same side of my family who are alcoholics as well, that are like career alcoholics, that are, you know, like Miller in the morning every day, and they're like, when is this dude going to get his shit together? Like they're way better off. You know what I mean? Even though they have this dependency on it, and they still probably shouldn't be drinking, should get their life together. They're looking at this other family member like, dude, get it together. Be a better alcoholic.
Yeah.
You know, or, you know, it's like, and it's after it gets past that point, it's like, you know, I guess forcing, you can't force people into it. Like when people get court ordered to go to things, you know, what effect does that have on them?
None.
How often, what's the percentage of people, you probably don't know off the top of your head, but like it'd be an interesting number to look at. Like how many people that are forced into sobriety by you know, legal issues or court orders or whatever, you know, like
virtually none, I'd imagine.
Right. It has to be so low.
Yeah.
And why do they go back after that? After being hooked up to tubes for
it's pain, man.
Yeah.
It's the thing with addiction is that addiction is the manifestation of deeper psychological and emotional pain that person does not have the tools, resources, or skills to make sense of or process. And so the substance or the behavior is the best solution that they know in order to manage that pain. And the thought and idea of being present to that pain and confronting that pain and going through a long, arduous process of recalibrating their entire system is very frightening. And it's like when you're that deep in addiction, like your brain can't process that. Like it doesn't care. Its ability to think about medium to long-term goals or consequences is totally diminished. Like it does real damage to somebody. It causes brain damage. Like their ability to make sense of and process reality is severely diminished. The emotional center of your brain is highly activated. The prefrontal cortex, you know, responsible for some of those more critical decision-making logic factors is reduced. And it just takes an incredible amount of you know, intervention. And the person needs to come to that realization on their own. And some people don't, you know. It's tough, man. I'm sorry about your family member.
It's okay. I mean, again, it's like, it's one of those things that it's like, this is business as usual in that sector of my family. You know, and it's just
right.
I would apologize more for the people in that immediate family, because they at this point, you know, when you're zombied out drunk, you're like, you're saying, like, you're not dealing with the baggage. You're not doing any work, and you're actually just creating traumatic events for other people in your family. You know what I mean?
And they don't want to do that.
No,
at some
no,
deep
no.
subconscious level, they understand what they're doing is fucked up, but you're so deep in it, like you can't process it. Right? Like you're so disconnected from yourself, your own emotions, your own thought process, your own clarity of decision making, your own rationalizing, that let alone anybody else, your ability to feel any level of empathy, your ability to I mean, is just destroyed. You're such an like addiction, deep addiction is the highest level of survival. Like if you're in a deep addiction, you're living and operating in every capacity as if like a saber-toothed tiger is constantly chasing you. So imagine a dinosaur walks in and is about to kill us. Could you have any level of empathy if you just got a text message that somebody else is hurt or like hurt by your actions? Like, you wouldn't give a fuck. You couldn't even.
You're just trying to stay away from the fucking dinosaur.
You couldn't even conceive of. There's no level of sensation that you could develop to have any form of empathy, because this is the immediate threat. There's a gun to our head, right? That's what the deepest level of addiction is.
Damn.
Is your entire operating system is operating as if somebody has a shotgun to your head. And so your ability to rationalize, be clear, completely goes out the window. And it's sad. It really is sad, you know?
I've never heard it explained that way. That's genius. Yeah, that must be what it is. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's hard to, because it does take a level of compassion for the people, you know, in those people's lives, to help them kind of find their way out of it. And it's like, once that compassion's gone, man, you're really on level. You're really on hard mode. You're doing this on very hard mode. Mm-hmm. It's like a video game or something that you turn the difficulty all the way up for yourself. Yeah. Because it's going to be even harder for you to pull yourself out of that hole when you've lost the compassion, when people aren't texting you saying, I hope you get well soon. Like, that's all gone.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the tough part, you know? Yeah. That's like where, you know, then that, you know, they've already got a ton of trauma, and now they perceive that they've been abandoned from the people around them, further creating more disconnection, more emotional turmoil, right? More pain. It's just, it's this compounding black hole once you start to go down it.
It's rough. You would think that, like, when the physical starts to happen, you would think that would at least start to get a person thinking like cause and
effect.
Cause and effect, like just like if you're, I don't know, making an investment in something, like looking at the value versus the cost, right?
Right.
Like, you would at least start to think that when you're on a gurney hooked up to tubes to try to keep your life to, you know, you're hanging on by a thread, that you would at least at that point that those people would be able to, you know, at that moment, maybe we can start doing a little bit of calculating the ROI on this fucking, you know, malt liquor that we're, you know, killing ourselves with. But it's still is so hard for some. You know what I mean? And
you would definitely think so.
Yeah.
But it's like the way the brain processes it, right? It's like, if that malt liquor has quite literally been the only thing in your life for the last X amount of decades that has created pleasure and reprieve from pain, and now you're in a really heightened state of pain, like fucking
survival.
Tubes, yeah, tubes everywhere.
Yeah.
You don't know anything else. Like, somebody could say, well, hey, like, I've got this program and we can go do these things and, like, we'll get you in rehab. And it's like, that's like speaking Chinese. Right. It's like, that induces more pain, uncertainty. At this point, your self-confidence and self-esteem is absolutely desecrated, right? Your energy system, your clarity, your motivation, your willingness, your, like, all of it. Yeah. So you're operating from, like, the depths of hell, and you've never been exposed to anything else that could make you feel better. And the only thing that has ever made you feel better is that thing. And so now, because you're in even more pain, it's like, a lot of times it's like, doesn't always go that way, but the drug now becomes even more attractive. Like, fuck, let me just get a little bit of that and get out of how I'm feeling now.
Right. It's that fucking saber-toothed tiger. That's
trying to just get some air because they're drowning.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, how are we supposed, how is somebody, you know, in that, like, with a person like that in their lives, how is somebody supposed to, because this war is not won through, you know, court orders, like we were just saying. It's not won through tough love. And I feel like you're a big, like, the stuff that you're saying really kind of is a reminder that, like, addiction and stuff like that, it needs to be met with some level of compassion for it to be overcome. Yeah. And it's so difficult for people after decades and decades of disappointment and frustration and, you know, help and every chance being offered, right? Yeah. How does a person keep that compassion? Yeah. You know what I mean? I know it's not our responsibility, but at the same time, it kind of is, because it's like I said, the war is not won through tough love. It's won through compassion and personal growth, right? So it's like, do you just keep fucking throwing shit at the wall until, you know, hopefully one day they wake up and it sticks? Or it's like, what do you know, I guess to take the focus off of the person dealing with the addiction and more put it on, you know, the person dealing with the person, with people that are dealing with addiction. It's like, what is somebody with a family member at rock bottom even supposed to do?
Yeah, that's kind of the hard question, man. If anybody is dealing with family members who have addiction, there's a great resource, Al-Anon, which you can look up on Google.
How do you spell that?
AL-ANON. There's meetings. I'm sure.
Oh, so it's Alcoholics Anonymous online kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's for people. It's for the family members rather
okay.
than the actual alcoholics. So it's like a support group for them. Like, how do you
That's
manage?
cool.
What are you supposed to do? Yeah. So that's a great resource. But, yeah, it's tough, man. You know, after years and decades of heartache of watching somebody you love struggle, and these constant ups and downs and promises that are broken and everything else, it's like you experience compassion fatigue, which is a real thing.
That's what
you know, and so you naturally go into self-preservation mode, and self-preservation mode is a way you just distance yourself. You begin to detach as a way to protect your own heart and health and mental health and sanity, you know. But it's that's where it gets sticky, because it's like, you know, what the addict needs is more connection, more love, you know, more support, more reminders. But, you know, at the end of the day, they have to be the one that gets to that place. You know, it's like you can have an intervention, right? Your whole family can sit there and read letters, and express all of their love for you. But if you're not ready to face your pain, if you don't get to that place spiritually within your human development where you develop the courage to confront the deeper challenges, the deeper wounds that you're running from and numbing from, nobody can go inside you and do that work for you.
Yeah. When you're pushing away the fact that you have to apologize to countless people for the last I don't know how many years of, you know, shit that they've been dealing with because of you, that's like a huge mess to try to figure out how you're going to start cleaning that up. And then
there's so much baggage.
And then it's easier, quicker, cheaper, more efficient way to just handle that. Hit the corner store.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for, you know, listening to me rant about that. I do want to switch gears a little bit, go back to one thing you were talking about alcohol use disorder, because that is not a term that you really hear much. I mean, you probably hear it a lot because you're in the industry, but you're in the business of helping people. But you know, what is that, and why is that different? Why is that its own thing? Why is it separate from alcoholism or whatever? You know, other forms of alcoholism. What is it, and why is it different?
Yeah, I think alcohol use disorder is a newer term that medical community established a few years ago, representing, a spectrum of your relationship with alcohol. So before it was like black and white, like either you got it under control or like you're an alcoholic, and they came out and said, no, it's more of a spectrum. There's a gray area in between. And so alcoholism would refer to, kind of the extreme end of a dysfunctional relationship with alcohol, where you're constantly craving, you're drinking way above recommended guidelines, you're thinking about alcohol, maybe there's more of a physical dependency, whereas with alcohol use disorder, it could represent anything on the spectrum that would represent some sort of dysfunctional behavior. So with alcohol use disorder, let's say, a lot of people are let's say binge drinkers. They're high functioning Monday through Friday, but then Saturday when they drink, or maybe they drink twice a month, and when they do, they binge and they overdo it and they wake up feeling like shit, and it starts getting in the way of things. So that's alcohol use disorder.
Okay.
So anything that isn't like, hey, I can have one or two, stop.
Forget about it for a month.
Forget about it for 6 months, and it's just not a thing. It's like, when was the last time you went rock climbing? I don't know, 6 months ago or something. Have you thought about it since? No. Have you, wanted to go rock climbing on the weekend but felt like you couldn't, or like felt like you were missing out? No, it's just not a thing.
It's just rock climbing to me.
Yeah, it's just it's irrelevant. It's like this pen. Like there's no tether to it, right? So that would be a normal relationship, a healthy relationship with alcohol. But most people who have any sort of relationship with alcohol, that's not what it is. It's something that they're going to on a regular basis as part of their routine, as a way to end the day, as a way to relieve stress, as it's included in the way
to celebrate something positive happening.
Yeah, they're tethered to it somehow. And if you're tethered to it somehow, and you find that like it's hard to scale it back or to stop, or you go out to that brunch and everybody's drinking and you're like, fuck, I really want to drink, like you may fall somewhere on the spectrum of alcohol use disorder. So
it's kind of a term for people to figure out where on the spectrum they are, or it's like it's basically a way for people to figure out, because you might say, hey, I know my family member, he's an alcoholic for sure. I know I'm not that, so I must be good, right? But then there's this stuff in between,
right?
And that's kind of what the alcohol use disorder could be. There's so many levels, right?
Yeah. That and that's like a big distinction too. Is like everybody with regard to their relationship with alcohol will always compare themselves. Like, oh, well, I'm not that bad.
Yeah.
I've got clients who are like clearly struggling. Clear consequences, but they're like, but yeah, I'm not drinking at noon. It's like, dude,
that's not an accomplishment.
You're drinking 6 drinks a day, like every day, and it's like getting in the way of this and that in your relationship and your kids and da-da-da. But it
doesn't matter if it's at noon or at 5 p.m.
Everybody's trying to find a way to justify.
Right.
It's like, because nobody wants to lose out on what alcohol does.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to lose out on that pleasure and that euphoria. Nobody wants to lose out on, going to the bar and disconnecting from reality and fucking around with their friends. It's like there is a, like, there is a pleasure and euphoria that comes along with it, right? Like drugs are fun, right? But, eventually every person has to kind of look in the mirror and reflect and say, like, does this thing work for me in my life and where I'm going and where I'm trying to go? For a lot of people, dude, like, they're just cruising, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't super motivated, aren't driven by self-development or growth or the possibility of pursuing potential
or success
and success. Like, a lot of people are just cruising, and that's okay. Like, you're your own sovereign adult. You get to decide. But what I will tell you is that, like, what you think is working with alcohol stops working, because you're an organic meat suit going against something that is, every time you drink it, is messing with the sensitive balance in your brain.
It's a math problem.
Yeah.
That you can't get away from.
Yeah.
It's an equation.
Yeah.
And people try to say they have it in check, but it's like,
it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better. And if you know that it's a problem and you're like, okay, I'm going to kick the can down the road. Next year I'll do it. 2 years from now I'll do it. You're lying to yourself. I mean, maybe you will, but maybe you won't. But every day that goes on, every week that goes on, every month that goes on, every year that goes on, you're putting yourself in more debt and making it harder for the future version of yourself.
You don't want to get to that survival point.
Yeah, dude, shit gets real sticky.
When you're seeing red like that.
Yeah, man. Like, this shit destroys lives. It destroys families. And I think when we look at our society, generational trauma is passed down generation to generation primarily because of alcohol.
It's a big one.
Like, when people are mentally and emotionally fucked up, or dysregulated, or they've got trauma, they're more likely to use alcohol. And now, if you're a parent and you're drinking alcohol, you are not being the best parent you can be for kids, right? Like, it's just the fact. Like, you're coming short. You're not fully present. You're not giving them what they need. You're not helping their brain develop. You're not doing all the things that you need to do. And so that kid now has parents who are alcoholics and watches everything that comes along with that, all the dysfunction, all the trauma, all the arguments, all the yelling, all the failed promises, all the late to picking you up from school, all the divorce. And then that kid grows up and he's now more likely to model his parents' behavior, and he's got all this dysregulation inside of him, and his nervous system's all fucked up and his self-image is fucked up. He's more likely to do it. Like, dude, alcohol and it's like so much bigger than people realize.
It's deeper. Yeah, it's generational. That's crazy. I mean, we've all heard that, you know, but I think to lay it out like that is a little bit more eye-opening. You know what I mean? Because everybody knows that alcoholism is genetic or hereditary, they say, but even beyond the hereditary science, you know, what you just mentioned, it's like it's the situational stuff in people's family revolving around alcoholism is, you know, if your dad's an alcoholic and treats you like shit, then you're more likely to be an alcoholic yourself and treat your own kid like shit someday.
Yeah, children just model behavior, right? Like I said this on one of my last podcasts. It's called The Brain is a Predictive Modeling System. And it's like, dude, if you think back to when you were 4, 5, 6 years old, dude, we were all thrust into this experience of consciousness. And this planet, like, we're aliens. If you think back to when you were learning language, you're going to school, like you have such a limited scope of reality. You look at adults like they're gods, like they're these tall beings, and everything is filtered through like survival. Everything is catastrophic when you're a child. And so when your brain is developing and you're laying down the neural networks for your identity, for your perceptions of safety, for your self-image, for your relationship to people, and you're laying down all these early tracks with these dysfunctional figures who are coming short, they're not properly regulating themselves, they're not teaching you how to regulate yourself, manage your emotions, how to think, they're not like helping foster your development. It's just you're so much more likely when you've got all that dysregulation inside of you that basically goes unaddressed. Nowhere through our K through 12 system do you learn anything about the mind. Do you learn anything about your emotions? All of reality is filtered through your mind and your emotional operating system.
Or those are like elective classes that you have to seek out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even
like
then,
psychology
it's like,
class or whatever.
Yeah, that you might get in college. Like, how often are you getting psychology in high school?
Well, you have to like ask for it.
Yeah,
Or we did.
I don't even know if they have it.
Yeah, I had like, but it's like your senior year while they're shooing you out the door. They're like, oh, by the way, this is who Freud is.
You don't give a fuck at that point.
Right.
You're out.
That was
partying.
an easy A class for me.
Yeah,
Just chill out with all the people in a circle.
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
But that's the big thing. Is like that's a big message I push. Is like, dude, all of reality is filtered through your mind and through your emotional operating system. And if you don't have a good grasp on your mind, if you don't have a good relationship to your mind, if the voice in your head is fucked and your emotions are constantly up and down and you don't know why you're feeling anxious and you don't know why you're feeling triggered and you're emotionally dysregulated, life is going to be really hard.
Yeah.
Everything is filtered through your mental operating system and your emotional operating system. So if you want to live a better life, if you want to start to feel like you have a sense of personal power and agency and sovereignty and control over the direction of your life and not feel like a victim and a slave, you got to go all in on figuring out how to manage your mind and how to manage your emotions. Mm-hmm. And that's the game. That's what overcoming an addiction is. It's learning how to mentally and emotionally regulate. And once you learn those two skills, like, life transforms beyond your wildest imagination. Everything opens up, and that's how you overcome your addictions.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, man.
Yeah, it's a journey, man.
It's a journey. What are some of are you willing to talk about some of the stuff that you went through when you did this kind of work? I think you might have like a fuzz right here too. I just want to make sure. It might just be your hair. No, it's just your hair.
Okay.
It's just it's a rogue beard hair. It's attached. We're good. We're good. I just wanted to make sure. But are
make
you
sure to keep that in?
No, yeah. No. We'll keep it in, dude. We keep everything in, dude. No, are you willing to, it sounds like you've, through this process of becoming a sobriety coach and getting sober and all this stuff with your own personal story, you must have uncovered or linked. Sounds like it's a lot of linking. Like it's a lot of like finding like the trauma and then finding like the thing you're doing and being like, oh, this is why I behave this way. And so if you're willing to share some of the stuff you might have found about yourself, maybe it could help somebody, listening think, maybe that situation sounds similar to theirs. You don't share anything you don't aren't comfortable sharing. But.
Yeah, no, for sure. If I'm understanding your question correctly, so
like what are your traumas that you're willing to share that you discovered were linked to your alcohol use or abuse?
Yeah, so I think one of them was a couple of them that I could think of is one was like confidence and belief in myself, and the second was my inability to kind of interpret and manage my emotions. So I think confidence, like a lack of confidence or self-belief to be able to go out and create the life that I wanted for myself, that was rooted in growing up in an environment where there was alcoholism and addiction and emotional immaturity with my parents. So still to this day, like my relationship with my mom is like very surface level. There was no, hey, how's it going? How are you? What's going on in your life? Like there was from the moment I was born to really still to this day, there's never been any conversation that I've had that's gone deeper than the surface of, hey, how are you? Like, that's it. Like, what's going on?
It's
or
like
like
just
news or like politics or like my friend did this, right? There was never like this depth. So for me, that felt like kind of like emotional neglect. Like there was no depth of like connection.
Has she ever expressed that she's like proud of you?
For sure.
Where you're at now and stuff
lately,
like that?
Yeah, lately she has. But even then it's like, it doesn't go too much deeper, you know? And so I think as a result of that just like affected my like self-confidence, my perception of like my value and like my self-esteem. Because I was like, as a child, I interpreted that as like, okay, well, if the people who are like gods to me aren't taking the time and energy to like get to know me, then something must be wrong with me and I must not be good enough, or there's something about me that's like not valuable enough if they're not going deep.
Do you remember having that conversation with yourself at a young age?
Yeah. Yeah.
How old do you think you were when you realized that?
Probably between like 8 and 11. Yeah, and so the thing is like as children, because you don't have enough context and intellect and you have a very limited map of reality, you internalize everything. So you blame yourself because you're your only point of reference. You don't have enough map and experience and context and logic, and like you can't rationalize. So when something goes wrong as a kid and you experience some level of trauma, big to your little to your pain, you just blame yourself. Oh, something must be wrong with me. It's either the world is unsafe and like the world is fucked up and I have to figure out a way to survive, or I change something about who I truly am as a way to survive, right? And so really what's happening with all these traumas and things that we experience is they are disconnecting ourself from our true authentic source of energy, our authentic form of self-expression. And so that kind of transpired into like this lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem. And one of the things that like I always knew, like once I turned like 18 or 19, I got this like download that was like, you have to do something with your voice. Like you have to express yourself. There's something there. And that was like one of my biggest insecurities is like communicating. I always thought like my voice sounded weird, or like I didn't think I could do it. Like
because your parents didn't talk to you think? Or?
No, because when I was like 14 or 15, I heard myself on camera and you know how your voice sounds different from how it sounds in your head?
Yeah.
So it just like created this like fucking
normal shit that everybody hates.
Yeah, this like insecurity, you know? And so one was like confidence. And then the second was like just like I didn't have a good grasp on my emotions. You know, I got stressed out, overwhelmed, easy. And dude, I got into drinking alcohol at so young that I was just such a fiend for alcohol.
How old?
Such a fiend for the dopamine, like 14 or 15.
Yeah, that's young, man.
You know, and so
That's those years too. That's those.
yeah.
That's, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then a lot of it is just like, you know, the pain that comes along with that. Like fucking, I got the short end of the stick with my family, and like we were poor and we didn't have that much money, and like
Right.
there's like shame around different things. And so all those things, right, they create this lingering pain inside of you. It affects your confidence, your self-esteem, your self-worth. And so the easy thing to do is to just kind of numb out and drink. And so when you stop drinking, you're forced to finally confront all those things and begin the healing process. And the healing process is about getting to a place within yourself where you are willing to reinterpret your pain. You're willing to assign a new meaning to your pain.
Such as?
So rather than I got the short end of the stick and like, you know, my being resentful of the, you know, your past and how you were treated, you recognize that your parents are just two random people who came together to try to figure out life and had you and had their own pains and own traumas, and everywhere they came short was simply a result of their experience with their parents. Like, you can't give away what you don't have. And you get to this place where you acknowledge that everybody is doing the best they can with the resources they have. So they did their best, and maybe their best fell short and it caused all these things, but it's like, how much longer are we going to hold on to that pain? Are we going to get to a place where we're willing to forgive them and forgive ourselves from holding on? Right. And forgiveness isn't about giving anybody a pass for doing you wrong and hurting you. Forgiveness is about getting to a place in your spiritual development where you are willing to let go of the hot coal that you've been carrying, recognizing that, hey, like, yeah, maybe you're justified in the pain. Maybe, you know, your abusers did hurt you. But in order to move forward, we have to be willing to let go of that energy so that we can free up that energy to use it more constructively in our life.
Do you think that comes with like maturity and just growing up too a little bit? Because it seems like, if I'm following the timeline correctly, maybe it was like when you were, you know, 8 to 11, maybe you're having these childhood like kind of sad feelings about this stuff, and then when you hit 15, you discovered alcohol. It turned into a resentment, kind of like, you know what, fuck these guys. You know what, I've got the short end of the stick. And then wherever at some point in your, you know, adolescence, you know, you grew up as a young adult, you started thinking more compassionately about it. Right,
or more compassionately about it until I quit drinking and started to have.
So in your 30s,
I had to do the work.
Yeah,
29 when I got sober.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like, listen, when you remove the alcohol, when you remove the substances, and you're left with who and what you are, you're left with all of your thoughts, all of your perceptions, all of your belief systems, all of the varying degrees of sensations and feelings and emotions that you have. You're basically like, all right, I just got to start addressing everything that's fucked. So if you've got these thoughts that are continually debilitating you and negative and frustrating and overwhelming, and you've got all this pain in your heart, it's like, that's the healing journey, right? Yeah. It's like all of the pain, all of the challenges, all of the heartbreak, all of the abuse, all of the neglect, whatever it was, you can heal from it. You know, you can transmute that pain into power. You can transmute that pain into purpose. But when we're in an addictive cycle, we don't recognize that or see any of that or think it's possible.
You have to kind of have to raw dog it, to be crude about it. But you have to take the numbing substances out of it and just take it straight.
Yeah, that's the whole deal.
Take that trauma or whatever head on.
That's the whole deal. Is you
clear-headed.
You have to get to a place where you're willing to be fully present to and to confront the pain.
Yeah.
And through that process, you will evolve and grow and mature. It's like the analogy I always give is like from a caterpillar to a butterfly. You know, a caterpillar can move 1/100th of 1 mile per hour on a flat 2-dimensional plane, right? And it can only see what's in front of it. And then it has to go through this cocoon process where You know, it's literally, I don't know how long the cocoon process is. I should probably look it up because I say it so many times. 2 weeks, 6 weeks, where it's curled up, its ass in its face, eating its own shit. It's probably hot. It's probably sticky.
I didn't know that.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I can only imagine that's what a cocoon process is
Right.
like. You know,
Yeah.
it's curled up, a little caterpillar. And it has to go through this crazy metamorphosis, you know, for what, you know, I don't know how long a caterpillar or butterfly stays alive, but for, in relative perspective, a really long time, right? And when it gets to the other side, it evolves as a butterfly, and it can fly across states and, you know, move in 3-dimensional planes, and it's beautiful. And, you know, it's like, it's kind of the same deal as being a human. This healing process, this healing journey, this process of increasing your self-awareness, of learning how to manage your mind, learning how to manage your emotions, developing these things that aren't taught. Dude, it empowers you in a way that you can't cheat the system. You have to put in the work.
Yeah. It's a lot of fucking awesome info, man. I appreciate you coming on and talking about this,
sure, man.
opening up a little bit to us and everything, man. You know, it makes it hit home for people because I feel like, you know, there's a lot of people online doing a lot of things, you know, and trying to help people or trying to teach people how to cook or teach people how to do all kinds of different things. But you're always kind of like, sometimes, you know, you're wondering like where the authenticity starts, you know what I mean? And like, okay, how much trauma has this guy had? He looks pretty put together, you know what I mean? How much has he really had to deal with? Did he just stop drinking and, you know, now he's selling me this course, you know? And I feel like it is important to share a little bit just so people can know that it comes from a place of like experience, all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That you've actually like been through all that. You didn't make your first million, not that you're a millionaire yet, but it's like you're not one of those like motivational dudes that, you know, made their first million on selling a book on how to make $1 million.
Right,
you know what I
right,
mean?
yeah.
And so that's important to me. So I really appreciate you like, taking some time to open up.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I want to go
been
back
through it
oh,
all, dude.
Yeah, you fucking sounds like you have, man, and you've helped a lot of people. What are we? Do we have a number? Do we have a number on where things are at as far as how many people you have helped? Maybe get past a certain point, past 30 days, or you know what I mean, or like how many people we can start with how many you have now that you're helping.
I mean, I've worked with over 200 people personally.
Okay.
You know, I would say a good high percentage of people have gotten through the 90 days successfully.
Nice.
I've helped a good handful of people achieve a year. There's a lot of people on their way to a year in sobriety.
Shout out to them.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Today is actually National Sober Day.
Is it really?
September 14th.
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Because we have another guy coming after this that's a sober comic, and we're going to talk about some of the same shit.
Yeah. That's
so,
awesome, man.
that's awesome. Today really is sobriety day,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
That's why we're not drinking on the pod today. No, we're just drinking water.
But my podcast is, I think it's like, you know, over 200,000 listens.
Dude, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
you hadn't
thanks,
even
man.
started that yet, I don't think, or just started it when we met last year.
Really?
Right? Yeah, you were like, I think I'm going to start one too, or like,
Oh, wow.
I think you were just, because you were doing all the content stuff and you were
Mhm.
doing the coaching, you know, you were going full bore with that, but I think you had
Maybe
either
just
just started it or
something.
we're
Yeah.
just thinking about starting the podcast. So
Yeah, podcast is over 200,000.
That's
It's reached
crazy.
people from
That's
all
fucking
over the
awesome.
world. I think I've
Congrats.
probably helped, I don't know, at least a couple thousand people or more.
who knows how many you really helped that saw a TikTok
I
from
get-
you and just like, you know, just took your advice without ever reaching out to you? Like how many, you know, who knows how many people follow you on TikTok?
Hundreds and hundreds reach out saying, hey, I'm months sober, 6 months sober. I've had hundreds of people comment and say
Without even doing your program. Your
yeah,
coaching
yeah,
program.
without just through the
content.
podcast.
That's awesome.
That have reached out and been like, I'm 6 months sober thanks to you. I've heard your first TikTok, you know, back in, you know, October, March. I've helped thousands.
It's just so unique to me because it's such a selfless, I guess, art form, what you do. Like I look at everything through like an artist's lens, I guess, maybe. And it's like it makes me feel a little bit like the stuff that like people do for, their with their platform or whatever, like it, comparatively to you can't compare apples to oranges or whatever, but it's like, it just feels like it's so selfless what you do versus like a lot of people that are posting on Instagram and like trying to promote their band or their podcast, or people like me, like trying to promote shit and push shit online. It's like there's a lot of people doing that mostly for personal gain, a large of some sort, whether it's sharing their art with people or their music or whatever. And it's like you just wake up every day and you're like trying to help people. That's your art form, and I think that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's what I feel called to do. It feels like, at least now, maybe it'll change in a few years or something, but like it seems as though I've been able to reverse engineer back from the moment I was born, the family I was put into, all the experiences I had, every person I met, every fork in the road, every book I read, every relationship I had, everything that worked out, everything that didn't work out led me to be doing this work,
Yeah. Well, you're fucking doing it, man. Let's see, what else do I have on here? What's the most common cause of failure with being sober? Like, I don't know if you want to call it failure, if that's too harsh of a word, but like when somebody relapses, and this has a follow-up question too, but when someone, like, you've been working with somebody for a month or something like that and they're like doing great, like what do you think is, I guess maybe not the most common, let's do what are the most common causes of failure, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an easy one, dude. So when it comes to alcoholism, alcohol use disorder, addiction in general, the reason I think they call it a disease is that like you can't cure it. So no matter how long you're sober, doesn't matter if you're sober for 20 years, if you use again, you're going to right back square one
to zero. Yeah.
Like, there's no getting sober, doing ayahuasca, mushrooms, psychedelics, ketamine therapy, MDMA therapy, somatic breath work that'll clear your trauma and then develop a moderate relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
And everybody who develops an addiction, there's some deep, dark recess that wishes they could go back and control it. And when you get sober, the brain will try to convince you that things are going to be different this time. What keeps people addicted is that they're like, just one more time, and then I'll do it. Just one more time. So something that commonly knocks people out is they get sober for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 90 days. And then they start feeling really good and they feel like they solved all their problems and the relationship got better and they're doing better at work and they lost that 15 pounds. And they're like, it'll be different this time. I can control it. Yeah. So they keep giving into the voice that tells them it's going to be different. And the people who are successful ultimately get to a place where they can just connect the dots and be like, okay, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, where I'm at, what's going on. If that voice in my head says, just have a beer, it's going to be different this time, you just don't listen to it. You recognize that voice lasts 2 minutes, 15 minutes,
that voice
half
is
an
a
hour.
demon inside of you.
It's a demon.
Jesus.
I had a buddy of mine, so like one of my mentors who's like 24 years sober, we did a TikTok live impromptu and he was like, dude, yesterday I was sitting on my couch and all of a sudden I was like, I got this like urge to like have a couple drinks. Dude's like 24 years sober. And he was like sitting there thinking about it and like rationalizing it. And he was like asking his mom, yeah, like it'll be different this time. Like he's like kind of retired. He's like, and he's like, yeah, it's fucking crazy. It's been 24 years. And I still get that voice in my head saying, just fucking crack open a beer.
And it's probably more convincing too as time goes on. The better you're doing, I bet you that voice gets more like it starts out like, have a drink, pussy. You could do it. Just have a drink. And then like 24 years later, it's like, hey, buddy, come on.
Yeah.
Like
it's tonality will change.
You've been doing really good.
Yeah.
I think you could go for a cold one. And it's like it probably gets a little snakier as time goes on, that voice.
Dude, there's so many ways it'll try to rationalize it. There's 150,000
It really is like an
ways.
Omnipotent fucking demon that lives inside of people.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
And so that's what you have to learn to manage, And in the beginning, when you first quit or you overcome an addiction or whatever, the hard part is like the debt that you have to pay back psychologically, emotionally, neurochemically. You're bored, you're going to have some cravings, you have FOMO, your buddies are out, you're at home, you know, you make sacrifices here and there.
You
you're
realize
not
that
doing things.
you can't hang out with your friends anymore. A lot of people probably have that realization.
Yeah, and that's tough, right? Like you're isolating maybe a little bit. So like you got to deal with those like physical sort of like close like withdrawals and like, you know, the reacclimation of like your values and society and like how you spend your time. The farther away that you get, all that stuff normalizes and gets easier. But the farther away that you get, the next thing you have to manage is that voice.
Yeah.
It's like, Taylor, dude, you've been doing so good. 6 months? Like, come on,
Congrats.
bro. Yeah, dude, you've been sober 3 years now.
Yeah.
Dude, you're a sobriety coach. You know, you've been meditating for 3 years. You teach people how to, you know, manage their mind, their emotions. You've healed your trauma. Like, you're good, man. It's going to be different this time.
Dude, it must be crazy pressure with you when that voice pops up because you've got, like, now there's other variables that are there's other things that are attached to like if we were just talking about you for a minute, like you're 3 years, right? You said it's like you've got in that 3 years of sobriety now you have 200 people that are looking to you for, you know what I mean? Like so much goes out the window if you fucking relapse.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, I've got so many more reasons to not relapse.
Right.
Now.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
But it's like, damn, even if you start thinking about that, it's like, like
I got a lot riding on
so
the line.
much at stake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which is good. I'm glad.
It's just
You
good
know,
perspective for people.
I built this whole thing for myself to optimize every possible chance of never going back.
Fuck yeah. That's awesome. So the follow-up question would be like, when people do relapse, what is like the protocol for you as far as like, you know, I'm sure that it has something to like, you don't want people to feel too bad because then that just goes, they're going to go back down the road. You know what I mean? How do you handle a relapse, and then how do you basically start over at zero with a good attitude and like not go back down the wrong path because fuck it, I already relapsed and I'm just an alcoholic piece of shit.
Right.
So I guess I'll just keep fucking drinking because I'm a failure.
Right.
Because that's gotta be common. That's gotta be common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first thing to recognize is that you're not starting back at zero, right? If you're driving from California to Vegas and halfway through you run out of gas, like you just go find the nearest gas station, you just keep moving forward. So it's really like, you hear it in the traditional recovery community, it's progress over perfection. You know, if you're drinking 4, 5, 6, 7 days a week and that was your cadence for months or years at a time, and then all of a sudden you go 90 days or you go 6 months and you drink once or twice, like, well, now you only drank twice in 6 months, and that's massive progress forward from what you were doing before.
Right.
Right.
So you find the good, you find the positive.
Yeah, it's all just about making progress and moving forward. Like the thing I say all the time in my content is we're not quitting drinking. We're learning how to live alcohol free. And that's a learning process. If you've been drinking since you were 15 and now you're 30 and you want to quit drinking, you have to learn how to live a life free from alcohol. That means you have to learn how to manage your time. You have to, what are you going to do in the evenings? How are you going to handle your stress? How are you going to handle your overwhelm? What are you going to do on the weekends? Who are you going to hang out with? How are you going to manage boredom? Right? That's all a learning process. Just like you learn math. It's like, it's a learning process, how to manage your mind, how to manage your emotions, how to manage boredom, how to manage your time. You know, so it's progress over perfection. And if somebody does have a relapse, I look at it like very simply, like at some point, like you get rid of the shame and the judgment and you just rewind the tape. So the way I look at it is like, we're looking at game tape.
Like football.
Yeah, it's like football or basketball, right? Or like a business. I like to think of it like business because in a way, business is like black and white. There isn't a ton of emotion in business. And you just look at everything from an input-output process. You look at the standard operating procedure and see where we need to make adjustments. So let's look at the game tape. Let's rewind back to the moment or the day that you ended up drinking. What were you thinking?
Relapsing.
Or relapsing. Right. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? How did you rationalize it? What happened right before? What happened the day before? Were you under stress? Were you overwhelmed? Where were you? Who were you with? How did you rationalize it? You know, what were you feeling in your body that was too intense? You know?
So focusing on like the why. And
who,
not,
what, when, where,
yeah.
why,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
And just look at it, right? And so like, oh, you were with this person? Oh, you decided to go out to this concert? Okay, great, right? A relapse isn't a failure. It's an opportunity to learn what you haven't learned yet.
Right.
Like,
Okay. That's a
where
good
in
way
your
to look at it.
decision-making process are you making an error? Where are you not willing to make a sacrifice? Did you apply the strategies or tools to manage your mind in that moment? Did you apply the strategies and tools to manage your emotions in that moment? You know? And we just figure it out. It's like, was there something deeper?
Yeah.
You know, was there something deeper that we haven't talked about or addressed? It's like, yeah, well, you know, my relationship, and like there's this thing that's been going on that like you know, and maybe I was drinking in that moment as a way to like manage this totally other thing. It's like, okay, great, let's address the root cause. What can we put into place moving forward? Do you need to have a conversation with somebody? Do you need to set a boundary? Do you need to
Cut somebody out.
cut somebody out? Do you need to distance yourself? Do we say no concerts for the next 90 days until you better build a better foundation?
Right.
And then we just apply that, we integrate that, and then we move forward. And if we're confronted with a similar situation, it's up to you to integrate that learning and to make a different choice. And if you don't make a different choice, that's on you.
Because some people
You know?
will ride that high from, like you were talking about, from 60, 90 days, feeling good, looking good, and then they'll go to a concert, and but in that moment they might be more susceptible than ever to listening to that demon voice.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah,
that's
that
when
environment,
the demon
people.
voice is like trying to pounce. That's like prime attack mode for that demon voice, because it's like, you're at the show, dude. You love drinking at shows. You've been 90
Right.
days clean. Who cares? Have a Lone Star, you know? And it's like, and that's where they slip back.
Yeah.
It's rough. It's tough. It seems like a never-ending thing, man. You just have to like find a way to shove that demon in the box.
Well, it's learning to just manage the demon. It's learning to live with the demon and to recognize that like, you know, you can have thoughts and observe them. You can have thoughts and watch them. You can have thoughts and recognize that in 15 minutes, those thoughts are going to change. Mindfulness is at the core of every therapeutic model, right? And one of the things that like I teach everybody and is kind of part of the awakening process of becoming a more evolved human being is recognizing that you're not the mind, you're the observer of it. Most people never learn that, or they'll go to therapy for 10 years talking about their problems to discover that, hey, you're not the mind, you're the observer of it. You're not the sensations that you experience, you're the observer of it.
Yeah.
So learning how to create like distinct separation between the phenomenon happening inside you is a really important skill that we have to develop, because if you're fully identified with your mind and your mind is talking shit or being demonic and crazy, you're a victim to it. Right. But I can sit here and my mind can sit there and tell me, oh, Bardia, maybe you can have a drink, and it'll rationalize it. And I can just sit there and watch it like a leaf floating down a river and recognize that regardless of what it's saying, like average person has 60,000 thoughts a day. It's like, okay, if I just wait 15 minutes, it's probably going to change. And it always does.
Else. Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned in the beginning of the podcast something I wrote down, that when you were trying to get sober before you started working with the coach and going down this whole path, that none of the conventional stuff worked for you, the AAs and the therapies and whatever else you may have tried. Why do you think that stuff doesn't work for some people?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I think two reasons. One is the journey of getting sober or overcoming an addiction, quitting drinking, it's a long journey. Typically, when you first recognize it's a problem and start to try to stop, that's not when you stop. It's often going to take years of trying, getting sober, going back, getting sober for 3 months, going back, getting sober for 6 months, going back. It's like
How long are the going backs? Who knows?
Fuck.
Yeah.
That's what's scary. You know, you might get sober for 3 months and you might go back and all of a sudden you won't get sober again for 5 years. or a decade might pass. Or in between that 5 year, you might do a dry January or whatever. But like, that's why that shit's scary. But one is like, you go to those things and you're not really ready. You're just like, yeah, this is a problem, but like you haven't fully connected to that pain yet. And you're not really ready to give it up. So that's one. And I think the second thing is like, depending on what we're talking about when it comes to like traditional recovery, I mean, you've got like AA, you've got like a therapist or like an addiction counselor you can go to, you've got like maybe like rehab or like an inpatient or outpatient deal. The way that I look at getting sober is it's like a really multifaceted process. If you just have a therapist, you see them once a week, but there's no accountability for another 6 days. You need daily accountability. You need to be doing things every single day. You need to have routine. You need to have structure. If you're going to AA, like there's no talk of neurochemistry. There's no talk of trauma. AA's like model, and I'll probably get plenty of hate for this because it's very cult-like and like extreme and black and white and like, just this space is
seems kind of archaic, but
yeah, it was established 100 years ago, right? And so there's no understanding of mental health, trauma, and neuroscience back then, right? So AA is this deep, dark black hole. You show up every day and reaffirm you're an alcoholic. It's, you're born with character defects and you got to surrender to God. And so like a lot of...
It's a religion.
That just doesn't work for a lot of people.
Right.
And so you go to rehab. Rehab can be great for sticking you in a concrete wall and taking away your phone and keys and forcing you to be sober for 30 days.
That doesn't work.
But what happens after? Yeah. What's the aftercare plan? Like you can pay $30,000 and go to a rehab and have a great time on Malibu, but how do you stay sober for the next 12 months if you don't have a proper system in place?
Yeah.
So
well, then they try sponsors, right?
Yeah, and so like they'll recommend you go to a 12-step program and you get a sponsor, but it's like there's so much more to it. There's so much more to it, I think. And I think there's just a lot of gaps that the traditional things leave out, from really understanding the neuroscience side, lifestyle and behavior transformation, having a sense of daily accountability, right? Addressing your traumas, right? Like what was the underlying reason that you were turning to alcohol in the first place? What life problems do we need to start to overcome? What parts of ourself, our relationship to our mind, our emotional operating system do we need to recalibrate? And you can find bits and pieces of that kind of everywhere, but there isn't really many options out there that are kind of like an A to Z solution. And that's like what I'm trying to build.
Okay. So when you talk about daily accountability, like what does it look like, I guess without going into, too much detail, just because we're good on time, right? You're good?
What is it?
12:21? It's 1:21.
I think I'm good till like 2.
That's where we got to wrap up.
Okay.
Anyway, cool. But you talk about daily accountability and stuff. So I guess I have two questions. How is a sponsor different from a coach? Is my first one, and then the second one is like what are you doing as a coach? Like for people that need this daily accountability, are you reaching out every day? Are you sending out email blasts? Are you, do you keep track of all these people that and you message them, hey, how's it going today? Or do you wait for them to reach out? Or like, how does that look like being a coach?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. So the difference between a sponsor and a coach is massive, right? So a sponsor like you would get at like AA is just somebody who has gone through AA and like done the 12 steps and has got some time in sobriety and is just a totally regular, normal dude who just found a way to get sober.
He's been there longer than you, basically.
Yeah, he's just been there longer than you, and he just kind of walks you through the steps, and he's found a way to stay sober through that model. And he just stays in touch with you, and he's there to support you and jump on calls with you if you need it. Will sometimes give you rides to show up or whatever the situation is, right? He's not like particularly invested in you, right? Like AA is free. Like there's, and you don't really know who you're getting. It's just some dude, right? Or some woman, you know, who
Right.
happens to have some time in sobriety. A coach like is going to be trained and really understands like at a much, much deeper level how to support somebody mentally, emotionally, in a lot of different ways to help them problem solve things at a much, much deeper level, right? Has a better understanding of the brain, has a better understanding of trauma, has a better understanding of how we like develop and how we develop certain belief systems and how to begin to reconstruct those belief systems, right? If somebody's got trauma, like I can go in and I can identify, okay, like what was that painful experience for you? Let's kind of like look at it, and I can help them reprocess it and create a new imprint so that they have a different relationship to that experience. I can help them free up the energy that they're carrying in relationship to that experience. I can help them reinterpret, I mean, the whole deal. So, yeah.
It seems kind of like the difference between like taking a class and getting a tutor, right? In a way. Like that might be a crude comparison, but just like somebody who's more invested in you and a coach would be somebody who's more, AA is more like going to a class versus like the coaching is more of a one-on-one kind of it's like based on that person's situation.
Yeah.
And so when somebody starts with you on day one, you just start digging, right?
Yeah,
You just start asking questions.
A good coach can help you get from point A to whatever your point B is.
Okay.
Whatever that point B is, a good coach will help you get there. Whereas like, you know, you call your sponsor and it's like, dude, I'm super stressed out. They'll be like, all right, well, go to a meeting.
Yeah.
Like, that'll make you feel
Somebody
better.
will fucking deal with you. Go to a meeting.
Yeah. It's just different. It's just like meeting somebody on the street who's probably got tons of their own shit that they haven't worked through and deal with and is like just going to give you their opinion on something versus working with like somebody who understands what's going on and can strategically help guide you to heal and become empowered, so you've got the tools to be able to handle that part of your life moving forward in a more effective way.
I don't think a lot of people realize there's a difference there. I sure didn't. That between a sponsor and between AA and a coach / sponsor, yeah, but like between a sponsor and a coach, like I feel like maybe if you say I'm a sobriety coach, a person with no knowledge of it would be like, oh, so a sponsor, but
Like
it's
a paid sponsor.
Yeah.
And maybe,
but I mean,
like,
you're way more invested if you're monetarily invested in this person's success in quitting drinking or whatever.
And as like a coach, I'm going to be like, I'm just uncomparably more informed than just some dude who's been sober for 4 months in AA who's going to be like, hey, I'll walk you through the steps.
Well, and because they're going through that high, right? Like that newly sober, like I feel good,
The pink cloud.
I look good, the pink cloud, is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, I feel good, I look good, I want to start helping other people. But
Yeah.
it's like maybe you don't know, haven't done the work personally or mentally or, academically to, whatever, you haven't looked up enough shit to really be where you are in a point where you're really qualified to be helping other people. You're still you still kind of need to be working on yourself, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there maybe that are, I'm asking, is there a lot of people out there that are like, maybe they're not really graduated past working on themselves enough to be helping other people, working on themselves?
I mean, I think
kind of arbitrary, but
I think anybody, and if you're farther along the path versus somebody else, you can always turn around and put your hand out and try to pull them to where you're at. I think anybody can try to help somebody if there's good faith there. But yeah, it's like, like what's the difference between a 40-year-old soccer coach and like the 6-year-old that like comes in to learn how to kick a ball for the first time? Like that's how you would look at it, a sponsor, and a coach.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I didn't know there was that much of a difference, to be honest. It's just my ignorance with it. How do you combat or deal with, or how would somebody deal with replacement? Replacing alcohol with another unhealthy or questionably healthy, I think a lot of people probably go for weed, right? Which is like, it's light years better probably.
Yeah.
But everyone knows that that's a slippery slope. You know what I mean? If you're like, yeah, I don't drink, I'm just smoking a lot of weed, right? You're probably further away from true sobriety or truly, getting away from alcohol, because it seems to me like the likelihood would be pretty high that you'll get stoned and went, oh, fuck it, I'll just have a drink or what, you know what I mean? Like, and so how do you, because I'm dealing with this right now with the fucking nicotine, which is another thing I wanted to talk about. We can probably wrap it up with that. And, just because that's kind of close to me, I'm trying to quit like vaping, because it's just making me feel like kind of gross when I'd wake up in the morning, and it just looks dumb, and it's just, you're an inconvenience. You're always blowing smoke around, and like, I sing and scream and stuff. So I'm trying to kick that. And I'm replacing it temporarily, or trying to tell myself that I'm, replacing it temporarily with the pouches. And then like after a week of that, I'm going to cut it off, because you're getting so many milligrams of nicotine through the vapes, and then 3 milligrams in to me seems a little bit less, and it's just, I'm not physically smoking. I don't like them as much, so it's easier I feel like it's going to be easier for me to kick, but I've already bought a few of them, and so it's like I'm seeing in real time, right? Like I'm replacing this, like I have that voice going in my head, like I'm just replacing right now, but I know I'm like being self-aware about it, you know what I mean? And then like my goal is to just like, I want nicotine out of my life, you know what I mean? But I found like going cold turkey off of like ripping the vape constantly all day and all night long from the second I wake up, like I was like, we're just going to throw it in the trash. And then like moments later, I'm like, oh fuck, I am like actually like this is bad nicotine addiction. You know what I mean?
It's brutal.
And it's a sneakier one. So I guess let's just do the one question first really quick, is like, how do you get away from, or how do you look out for, the replacement thing as it pertains to alcohol, or just in general?
Yeah, man. You got to really stay mindful, and ultimately like overcoming an addiction, there's going to be pain. There's going to be debt. Right? That craving, that anxiety, that fuck, like once you throw your vape away, that agitation, whatever that is, that's like the debt that we're paying back, And so you just have to recognize that when you start to feel a sense of pain, whatever that pain is, boredom, agitation, anxiety, overwhelm, restlessness, you have to recognize that pain is temporary. It's not going to last forever. You might feel agitated from the withdrawal of vaping for half an hour or an hour, or all day. It just might be rough for like 4 days. But on the 5th day, you're going to feel 50% better. And by the 15th day, you're going to feel 85% better. And by 30 days in, you're going to feel 98% better. And if you're unwilling to go through that process, then you're unwilling. And you'll continue to stay in the cycle until you develop the courage to go through that process.
Yeah.
In the meantime, while you're going through that process, you can work out fucking hard. You can take cold showers every day. You can sit and do 10 minutes of Wim Hof breath work.
Yeah.
You can do meditations. You can make sure that you're eating really good, clean food. You can make sure that when you get that 5 p.m. craving, you schedule a yoga class for that 5 p.m. so you're just in it.
So replace shit with healthy good things.
Yeah, you got to take a proactive approach. That's what my whole deal is, and that's what the old recovery space doesn't do, or they advocate for it.
The
they're
AA.
They're like, it's just not in their system.
Right.
Or
it's more like
you should start working out. Like that'll be good for you. You should start to develop some mindfulness, but there's no system, structure, routine, accountability around that.
Okay.
So if you're coming off a drug, vaping or whatever else, like my whole thing is be super fucking proactive about it. Don't just quit the drug and make no other changes.
Right.
Figure out 6 things that you're going to do for the next 7 days and do your best to check off each one of those boxes and go to fucking war with it. Like I've got this podcast episode It's called mindset. You have to be willing to go to war. When you're overcoming an addiction, it is a fucking warlike mentality. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. Like if you can overcome an addiction, you can do anything. You know, that's how intense it is, right? Like when you quit the vape, it's like that intensity of agitation and restlessness is fucking brutal. That pain, right? But if you learn how to redefine your relationship to that pain and work through it, your capacity, your resilience, your window of tolerance really increases. So does your self-trust, so does your self-esteem, so does your self-confidence. So when you're approaching this thing, like you got to be willing to go to war. Overcoming any sort of addiction is not, I'm going to hire a personal trainer and like lose 10 pounds and like, let's see how we do.
Right.
It's like, no, you're going to fucking war with it.
Yeah.
That's the mindset that you have to have for a while until you allow this operating system that you've assaulted with substances to reharmonize.
Yeah.
And you have to be proactive about it. You can't just remove the thing and then just expect, okay, you know, you cut your arm, heal the wound now.
Right.
It's like, no, you got to do everything to start supporting the healing of the wound.
So it's almost inevitable that you're going to, you have to replace, but you have to do it with healthy things.
With good things.
With good things.
Yeah. Because like there's going to be a deficit. There's going to be a void.
The debt.
You know?
Yeah.
And so you got to find a way to increase that debt or to repay the debt, but you got to do it in ways that are healthy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of healthy ways. And it's never going to be the same. That's the part people struggle with, is psychologically and emotionally accepting that, hey, for the last 15 years of my life, I have regularly once, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times a week taken myself to a 13 out of 10 in terms of happiness and pleasure.
With alcohol.
Whatever substance it is.
Whatever substance, yeah.
And as I realize that this has become unmanageable in my life, it's a hard pill to swallow. I'm not going to experience 13 out of 10 again.
Yeah.
The best I'll get is 10. The best I'll get is I'll cruise at a 7 or 8. And for a while, nothing will even get me to a 9 because I'm neurochemically deficient. Nothing seems that exciting. Everything seems a little dull. And it's scary. It fucks with people. The first 6 months of getting sober, the weekends were fucking brutal for me. Because for 14 years, I trained myself, Pavlov's dog. I was salivating. I was so bored every weekend. I was sitting there on my couch watching a movie or playing video games, and I'm like, I'm fucking could be doing something else. Right, I could be out. I could just be fucking just obliterated.
Could hit up Dave.
Yeah. And so, but like, I was clear on the pain. I was clear of what I never wanted to go back to. 4 to 6 bottles of wine a day, injuring myself. And I was very clear on like the possibility of a better future. And I was clear on the fact that if I drank, that future that was so important to me would not be possible. And so it's the fear, man. Yeah. It's the fear. It's the fear of pain. It's the fear of consequence. It's the fear of like, I've got one life. There's one Bardia in this universe. And if I continue doing this thing, I'm going to get to a point where I have to confront my mortality, and I'm going to reflect back on the last X amount of years of my life and be like, what the fuck did I do with it? And that regret is so much scarier than any boredom or FOMO or a missing out that I could ever feel. The possibility of the pursuit of my potential is way more meaningful. And I think a lot of us who end up developing addictions, that's what we lack. There's so much pain, there's so much trauma that our entire brain, our operating system, our brain as a predictive modeling system is just looking at the present moment and the short-term future, and it's filtering it through all the bullshit of the past. So we can't see who we can become. We don't see the impact that we can make. We don't see the possibility in the pursuit of our potential. So we just keep reliving the same pain pleasure cycle over and over and over again. But when you start to get clear on who you could be, when you start to get clear on what the possibilities could be, if you really just strapped in, who could you be if you absolutely believed in yourself? Who could you be if your self-confidence and certainty was at a 10? Who could you be if you had insane amounts of self-trust? Who could you be if you weren't fearful, if you got over fear of judgment, if you weren't socially anxious around people? Who could you be? Who could you be if there was no limitations on the natural, authentic expression of your energy? Anything. You could create and architect reality. You could paint it.
You could help other people.
There's so many things you can do.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, that's why we're here. Alcohol's a fucking distraction. We were marketed, we were lied to, we were duped by our parents, by fucking Netflix, by every song, by every celebrity, by every movie of every hero that's drinking, creating this. It's big alcohol. It's this marketing, raking in billions and billions and billions of dollars at the expense of people's lives.
In the legal system, that it's a legal drug.
Yeah, it's insane.
Don't do the other drugs, but you can have a drink or two.
It's all fucking insane. And once you start to wake up to it, you can see it clear as day.
Yeah. And like you said, the good outweighs the bad. The good is so much, it becomes easier to focus on, it sounds like. It becomes easier to focus on the good things that happen after you quit whatever substance you're trying to quit.
Yeah.
I think the sneaky thing with the nicotine and the caffeine I wrote down just because those are probably the two things I'm most addicted to. Those things don't ruin your life in the same way. Right. Or it's a slow burn. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You might get a heart attack when you're in your 50s because you drink 7 cups of coffee a day. Or you might get lung cancer because you smoke cigarettes for 50 years
Very
or something.
slow burn on those ones.
Yeah, but it's like it's not as in your face. You know what I mean? And so it's a tough one, but it's not. It's also at the same rate. It's not as nicotine seems like more of a one that you just kind of have to be like, quit being a pussy and quit the nicotine. You know what I mean? But it's
dude, you just gotta be. You gotta be. You
never dealt with nicotine.
No, I was a smoker.
You were a smoker.
Yeah, so when I quit drinking, I probably smoked for another week or two, and then I just quit smoking.
Right.
Smoking.
You were a smoker while you were a drinker, right? While you were drinking, you wanted to have a cig.
Yeah. That it elevated the buzz. But there were periods of time in my 20s where I smoked independently of drinking, where I was addicted to cigarettes, but it was mainly connected to alcohol.
Do you miss? I guess miss is probably not the right word, but does that voice creep up for one more than the other? Like a lot of people say they quit heroin, but they still think about a cigarette every now and then.
Mm-mm. Definitely don't think about a cigarette.
Okay.
The thought of alcohol creeps in from time to time, but at this point, I've trained my mind. I've had so many hundreds or thousands of repetitions of what I encourage everybody to do, and I encourage my clients to do, is when you think of alcohol, take yourself back to the most painful moments you've had drinking. And you want to create an association. So when alcohol pops up, you want to create a neural pathway, a link to pain. You want to go from alcohol equals pleasure to alcohol equals pain. So at this point, every time I think about alcohol or the thought and idea of whatever, I just take myself back to the last 6 months before I quit drinking 4 to 6 bottles of wine a day and hurting my shoulder. And I'm like, oh, that's what alcohol is.
Did you fall over or something?
I was swimming.
Oh, fuck.
I was racing my buddy in a pool super aggressively, and my left shoulder just fucking dislocated
in the pool,
mangled.
That's crazy. That's a good feedback though. When do you remember the last time that you had the demon talking to you? Do you remember?
Yeah, dude,
where you were
2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. It only lasted 3 seconds, and it was this jolt of energy that came in that was ooh, getting fucked up would feel really good right now. And then I remembered ooh, yeah, I can't. And then it was gone.
Nice.
And it was just this wave of energy.
You were like, fuck you, bro.
Lasted
here.
3 seconds.
Damn. Because you're trained.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I could almost feel it right then. Ooh, it's fucking getting fucked up. Sounds really good right now. Were you just out with friends or was
no, just I was working or something. Or I don't even know what I was doing. It just came in randomly.
It'll get you.
Yeah.
Well, we can wrap this up, Bardia. You schooled me once again.
Good stuff, man.
It's amazing talking to you, man. And I can just it's always a great conversation, and I hope that my only hope is that bringing you back yearly can if it helps one person that is drinking too much and wants to quit, doesn't know how, all their friends are drinking, they think that it's impossible to get it out of their lives, but they are sick of waking up feeling like shit. I just hope that it, helps one person. I know that it helps me keep my own, social drinking in check, following you and being friends with you. And you're like, by the way, you're going to have to pay me for that nicotine advice, bro. Like none of this shit's free. No. But yeah, I just, I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing some of your own stories, and just everything you do is fucking awesome. It's cool to me that there's a person out there that wakes up in the morning and, when they're recording their fucking TikToks and shit, like you're not out here shaking your ass on there for likes and comments. Like you're doing what you do just because you want to help people. And that's the first thing you think about when you wake up. And that's just fucking rad. So,
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for
thank
having
you
me
for
on,
everything
dude.
you do. Plug your podcast and everything so people know where to find you.
Yeah, for sure. So my my whole brand is Stop Drinking Coach. So
is it the Stop Drinking Coach or just
kind of both? Okay. So on TikTok it's at Stop Drinking Coach. Instagram is the Stop Drinking Coach. Podcast is the Stop Drinking Coach. Website is www.thestopdrinkingcoach.com. So if you Google Stop Drinking Coach, I'll pop up number one. If you go to Spotify or Apple and look up Stop Drinking or Quit Drinking, I'm usually right up there number one.
And the podcast is just called Stop Drinking Coach?
Stop Drinking Coach. Yeah, I've got like 27, 28 episodes on there that kind of cover the full spectrum from A to Z.
And you're going to keep doing those?
Yeah, man, the podcast is kind of like my main deal. I've kind of cut back on short form content.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to put out a podcast, once a week or once every couple weeks. And that's kind of my main source. So, if you've enjoyed this, I've got 28 episodes that are, 30 minutes to an hour and a half each, where I go super deep on just different aspects of this journey.
And what does the process look like just for people? Maybe they need a little bit more of a, like they're like, oh, I just don't know what to say to him, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure what would go through people's heads, but like, what is in a nutshell the process of getting started with you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, www.thestopdrinkingcoach.com. There's an application that you can fill out, and it has you ask like 10 questions for me to kind of get a baseline of where you're at to determine if we'd be a good fit together. Right now I have a one-on-one program, but I'm in the process of finally launching a group program here pretty soon as well. And so those will be obviously different points of access and different price points as well. So yeah, the next step, if you wanted to work with me, would be to fill out an application on my website. And if you don't hear back from me right away, maybe because one, I just get a large volume of applications. If I was just responding people, it'd be a full-time job. But I may not have felt that we were a good fit one-on-one. But either way, at some point, if you've reached out to me, you'll get an email or text message once my group program is launched. So,
and you do emails, calls, text messages, Zoom calls? Like you do all that kind of stuff with people? Or
so I have a private community. It's on Slack. I may be moving it over to another community, but yeah, there's a community where everybody engages, and I engage people through the community. We private message, we do voice notes, and then we do calls.
Very cool.
Zooms.
Well, thanks again, Bardia. You're an angel.
Thanks for having me on,
Of
brother.
course. Hit that outro, Tony. Let's get out of here.